Alright everybody, so today we're going to be learning how to use a Bunsen burner. A Bunsen burner is a tool that we use in chemistry in order to apply heat to different chemicals and to run our reactions. So today we're going to be focusing on the safety when using a Bunsen burner and also how to operate the Bunsen burner. Alright, so for this session you're going to need 3 different pieces of equipment. First, you're going to need goggles. You're going to need the Bunsen burner, and you're going to need this thing called a striker. This is how you start the fire on the Bunsen burner. Now, before we start, let's talk about the lab safety. The first lab safety rule is to exercise caution when working with an open flame and hot objects. As you guys saw earlier, the Bunsen burner is used to produce a flame, and flames are hot. And so whenever you're working with a Bunsen burner, you want to consider all objects hot before using them. You don't know if someone turned on a fire right before you got the Bunsen burner, so just make sure that you're careful. Don't just grab things. You want to tap surfaces, make sure it's cool enough to touch, and then after that you guys can touch the objects. Just make sure you consider everything hot before you use them. Second thing is goggles need to be on for the entire duration of the lab. We want to make sure that we're keeping our eyes safe. Third, all hair must be tied back and long sleeves must be pulled up. We are working with a fire and we don't want any accidents where somebody's hair or clothing catches on fire. And the fourth thing, this is the objective for today. And the objective for today is to learn how to create a blue jet with the Bunsen burner. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Just a reminder that you must follow all lab safety rules, and failure to comply and follow the lab safety rules will result in you being removed from the lab and you getting a 0 on the assignment. And this is for your safety and for the safety of everyone around you. If you're not able to follow lab safety rules, you're just putting yourself in danger. You may be putting other people at danger, and it's more important for us to keep you safe and other people safe than for you to participate in the lab. So just remember that participating in the lab is a privilege, and in order to have that privilege, you need to keep on following the lab safety rules. So make sure that you refer to your instructor and all the lab safety rules your instructor communicates to you. Alright, so before we start, let's talk about the different components of the Bunsen burner so that when your instructor refers to certain objects that you are aware of what your instructor is talking about. So let's start with the Bunsen burner. Okay, so when we look at the Bunsen burner, there are different components, and so let's talk about each one of them. So the first thing is the top of the Bunsen burner. The top of the Bunsen burner is called the mouth, and this is where the fire is going to be coming out of. Second, this is the stem of the Bunsen burner. It's the long, tall part, the tower part, and this is where the gas goes up and it comes out of the mouth where the flame is going to be. Third component is right here. It's this thing in the middle. I'm going to move it a little bit closer to the camera. This thing right here that moves around. This is called the collar. Okay, and this controls how much air gets into the Bunsen burner, and more air equals a bigger flame. Now this collar is sensitive, so don't just grab it and twist it hard. You want to just slowly move it around. It moves very easily just with your finger. The fourth component is right over here. It's a little bit covered by the tubing, but this is the gas outlet. As you can see, this tube, you got a rubber tubing. This is where the gas comes from, and it's connected to the valve on your lab station right over here. And so this valve is where the gas comes out. It goes to the rubber tubing and it goes into the outlet for the Bunsen burner. Fifth component is right here. This right here is called the gas valve, and this is what allows you to turn on and off the Bunsen burner. If you turn it all the way to the right, that's how you close you turn off the Bunsen burner, and as you turn it more to the left, it's going to turn the Bunsen burner on more and the fire will get bigger. And then last but not least, this bottom part right here, this is called the base, and this is what allows your Bunsen burner to stand on its own. And you want to make sure that the base is always flat on the surface of the table. Alright, so before we get into talking about how to use the Bunsen burner, let's talk about some of the components and some important things to keep in mind. The first thing is the mouth right here. And with the mouth, you just want to make sure that you are very careful with it because it might be hot. That's where the flame comes out of. And so where the flame comes out of, that's the area that may be hot. So make sure that you don't grab the Bunsen burner by the mouth. You want to make sure you tap it, make sure it's cool, and just make sure that it's not hot so you don't grab it and burn yourself. Um, this right here, the gas outlet, this is how gas gets into the Bunsen burner. So just make sure that when you are using it, the rubber tubing is completely on it. You don't want any leaks, and just want to make sure that the rubber tubing is completely over the gas outlet. Next component we're going to talk about is the valve right here. The valve, again, we talked about how this is used to turn the Bunsen burner on and off. Again, you turn it all the way to the right, and if you turn it all the way to the right, that's how you turn the Bunsen burner off. And if you turn it to the left, that's how you turn the Bunsen burner on. Don't turn it to the left too much. You don't want a big flame, especially when you're turning on the Bunsen burner, because the Bunsen burner actually won't turn on if the flame is too big. So whenever you start, you want to turn it all the way to the right. Make sure it closes. It stops moving once you go a certain amount. You want to open it up a little bit until you hear gas coming out of the Bunsen burner, and that's when you want to light the Bunsen burner. And then lastly, the collar right here that moves around. So if you see these little holes, it means the collar is open. You want to make sure the collar is closed before you turn on the Bunsen burner. And then once you have your fire, the way that you make the blue jet is by opening up this collar right here. But we'll talk a little bit more in detail, but the collar is used to allow more air to come in, and that's what allows you to create the blue jet on your Bunsen burner, which is the purpose of today's lab. Alright, so let's talk about how to use the Bunsen burner. Now the first thing you're going to do is you're going to prepare and make sure that you're prepared for lab safety. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to put on your goggles, and then you're going to roll up your sleeves. Just a reminder that goggles must be on as long as you are at the lab station. If you are at the lab station, whether there's a flame on or not, you must have your goggles on. Your instructor will be very strict about this, and you will be given a reminder if your goggles aren't on, and failure to continuously comply with keeping your goggles on will result in you being removed from the lab. Again, it's about your safety first. Next thing you're going to keep in mind is you're going to look at the valve on your lab station. So let's go to the valve right here. So this is the gas valve on the lab station. And in the beginning, you want to make sure that the handle is making an L shape. If you guys take a look, it's like a right angle. It's an L shape in relationship to the tap outlet. So you want to make sure that it is in this position, making a right angle, an L shape, because this is how you turn off your gas valve. If it is like this, if it is in line, it means that the gas is on. But when you start, you want it to be off. So you want it making this L shape right here. Next thing you're going to do is make sure you set up your Bunsen burner away from the wall and any loose papers. Again, we are going to be starting a fire with the Bunsen burner, and we don't want the walls or any surfaces getting burnt. And again, paper is flammable, so we want to keep all loose papers away from the Bunsen burner. Alright, and lastly, just a reminder, fire always burns up, which means that there should be no dangling objects near the Bunsen burner. This includes paper, so if there's papers on the wall, or if there's papers that you're working with, just make sure that it is not above the fire. Your hair should not be hanging above the fire as well. If you have any jewelry, you might want to take it off. You don't want that above the fire as well. Anything that is above the fire is susceptible to getting burnt or getting heated up, and so we want to prevent anything that we don't want heated up from being above the fire. So just make sure that you remember, fire always burns up. Keep your hands, keep your body parts away from the top of the fire. Alright, now that you've prepared for the lab and lab safety, what you're going to do first is you're going to set up the tube. If your rubber hosing is not already attached to your Bunsen burner, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the tube first, make sure there's no cracks or holes in the tube. So my tubing looks pretty good, I already inspected it, but make sure you look at your tube, make sure there's no cracks on it first. Once you've inspected your tube, you're going to connect the tubing into the gas outlet on the Bunsen burner. Again, if it's not already attached, just put it onto the Bunsen burner. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your rubber tubing, the other side, is connected securely to the gas valve on your lab station. So one part of the tubing goes on the gas valve on your lab station. The other end of the tube is going to be connected to the Bunsen burner gas outlet right over here. Alright, and last thing to check before you start is you want to make sure your Bunsen burner is sitting flat on the lab station. You don't want it tilted like this because of the tubing. You're going to want to rearrange the tubing, rearrange the position of your Bunsen burner if it's not standing flat, and then just want to make sure it's flat before you start. All right, now you're ready to start the flame. First thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure the collar on your Bunsen burner is closed. And the collar, if you remember, is this part right here. Again, if you see holes, if you can see through the Bunsen burner like that, that means the collar is open. If it's open, the fire will not turn on. And so you want to make sure that the collar is closed like that, you can't see through, to make sure that the Bunsen burner can start. So again, make sure the collar on your Bunsen burner is closed before you start. All right, next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn on the gas on the lab station. So you want to turn the valve on the gas outlet on your lab station so that it is in line with the gas outlets. You want it pointing in the same direction. Once you turn the valve so that it is in line with the gas outlet on your lab station, what you're going to do is you're going to turn the valve on your Bunsen burner to allow gas to come through. And once you turn it on, you should be able to hear the gas coming out. Let's see if you can hear it. So again, you want to turn the valve on your Bunsen burner until you hear the sound of the gas coming out of the Bunsen burner. Again, that hissing is the sound of your gas coming on, and that means that you are ready to light the Bunsen burner. Just a reminder, you don't want the gas sound to be very loud. You want to hear just a quiet hiss. If you're allowing too much gas to come out of the Bunsen burner, you'll have a hard time lighting it. So you want to make sure that it is a small hiss, and as you're lighting it, if it seems like your Bunsen burner is not turning on, you could turn it on a little bit more. But again, you don't want a lot of gas coming out. You don't want a big hiss coming out of your Bunsen burner, because then you won't be able to light it. Alright, so to light the fire, what you're going to do is you're going to put the striker above the mouth of the Bunsen burner and strike it. And that's going to allow you to start the flame on your Bunsen burner. Just keep in mind that fire always burns up, so make sure that your hands and other body parts are not above the Bunsen burner when you're putting the striker above the Bunsen burner to light it. Alright, so once your Bunsen burner is on and the flame is going, what you're going to do is you're going to adjust the size of the fire using this valve right here. So if you turn to the right, it'll make the fire smaller, and if you turn to the left, it'll make the fire bigger. Now the size of the flame that you want is you want a medium-sized flame. You don't want it extremely huge like that, and you also don't want it super small. So you want something about this size. I'd say the size that you're looking for is about, the flame should be about as high as the stem on your Bunsen burner. And once you got the size that you want, you're going to create your blue jet by adjusting the collar. You're going to turn the collar right here. And by doing that, you can accomplish the purpose of today's lab, which is creating the blue jet. So if you guys look, there's a blue triangle in the middle of the fire. That is the hottest part of the flame. And the tip of the blue jet, is the hottest part of the flame. And so you want to adjust the collar. So I'm going to close it again to just get a regular fire. But by turning the collar, we can create the blue jet. And the tip of that blue triangle in the middle of the fire, that's the hottest part of the flame, and that's what you're going to try to make for this lab. Your instructor is going to be testing you at the end of this session, so once you feel comfortable turning on the Bunsen burner and making the blue jet, you're going to see your instructor, and you're going to just prove to your instructor you can create it by making the blue jet in front of your instructor, and that's how you'll get credit for today's lab. Alright, so let's talk about cleaning up. To turn off the Bunsen burner, what you're going to do is you're going to turn the valve until the Bunsen burner flame goes out. You also want to close the collar so that the Bunsen burner is exactly the same as you left it. Okay, keep in mind the fire was just on, so make sure as you're touching the lab equipment, you're going to assume that everything is hot and you're going to be careful. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn the valve on your lab station to turn the gas off. And again, you want to create an L shape. You want it to create that right angle to turn off the gas, and that's how you know the gas is off. Another way you're going to check is you're going to take the rubber tubing off. This is also part of cleanup, and you should hear nothing coming out of the gas valve. If it is on, you will hear a hissing sound of the gas coming out, and so we don't want that, so we're going to turn it so that the gas is completely off. And if you don't hear the gas, you should be fine. All right, another reminder, the outlet or the mouth of the Bunsen burner right here is going to be extremely hot because there was a fire on it. And so it's going to be extremely hot immediately after turning it off. So just wait until it is cool to return to your instructor. A good rule of thumb is to just wait about 5 minutes before moving it. But if you are in a rush because time is running out, you can tap it to see if it's warm. If it's warm, don't touch it. If it's cool, then you're able to move it. But when you're moving a Bunsen burner, you shouldn't be carrying it by the mouth anyway. You should be carrying it by the bottom. All right, so before we finish up, let's talk about a couple common mistakes that a lot of students make that prevent them from turning on their Bunsen burner. The first mistake that a lot of students make is they forget to close their collar before they light the Bunsen burner. So a lot of students tend to keep the collar open or forget about it, and then they try to light the Bunsen burner. If your collar is open, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much gas is coming out, you're not going to be able to light the fire. So make sure that before you start your Bunsen burner, the collar is closed. If your Bunsen burner isn't lighting, the first thing you want to check is this collar. Make sure that the collar is closed before you light your Bunsen burner. All right, the next common mistake a lot of students make, and this is the most common one, is with the striker. So a lot of students just try to move the striker back and forth. Please don't do this. If you do this, you're just going to wear out the flint in there and you're not going to accomplish anything. You want to create a spark, and you're not just moving the arm back and forth. You have to press the moving arm into the bowl. So this is the bowl of the striker. You want to push it in. So I would recommend using two hands, holding it like this with one hand, using your other hand and a finger to push. See this arm, this moving arm right here? You want to push that into the bowl. And as you push it into the bowl, that's when you move it to the side really fast, and that's what creates that spark. All right, so basically, you shouldn't be making multiple movements back and forth. What you want to do is you want to make one fast motion across the bowl, and that's how you create the spark. So again, not multiple back and forth. You want to make one really fast movement like that while you're pushing the moving arm in, and that's what's going to create that spark that will allow you to light the Bunsen burner. This may take some practice, so if you need a demonstration from your instructor, you can ask your instructor to help you, but it's going to take a while. So if you don't get it the first time, it's okay. Just again, keep practicing it. Don't just move it back and forth. You want to make one fast motion instead of multiple side-to-side motions. All right, and then the last common mistake a lot of students make is they make their flame too big. If your flame is too big when you try to create the blue jet, it will turn off when you open the collar. So just make sure that your flame is a medium-sized flame. Don't make it too large, because if you do, you won't be able to create the blue jet. If you open the collar, a big flame will just go out instead of creating that blue jet. All right, so to summarize, you'll be practicing how to use a Bunsen burner today, and your goal is to learn how to safely and properly use a Bunsen burner and striker to produce a blue jet in your flame. After you complete this worksheet, get it checked by your instructor. Your instructor will briefly verbally quiz you on the lab safety rules and procedures before giving you permission to start using the Bunsen burner. So make sure that as you're completing this worksheet, even if you filled in all the blanks, go back, review the information, make sure that you're comfortable and you're able to articulate the lab safety rules and the procedures, because if you can't pass your instructor's verbal quiz, then you won't be allowed to proceed and work with the actual equipment. If you fail the verbal quiz, your instructor will send you back to your seat, have you review the information that we talked about, the lab safety rules and the procedures, and then after that you'll be called back up in order to get verbally quizzed again, and once you pass, then you're able to go and work with the equipment. Okay, and after you work with the equipment, you're going to be working at your lab station and practice using the striker on the Bunsen burner. At any point, if you have any questions, refer to the instructions from this video and on your worksheet. You can check with your instructor to get some extra help. And once you're able to produce a blue jet, you're going to call your instructor over. You're going to demonstrate that you're able to create the blue jet. And once you get your approval from your instructor, you will be getting credit for this assignment. Just a reminder, if you cannot create the blue jet safely using the procedures and lab safety rules we talked about in this video, then you will not get credit for the assignment. So just make sure that you're practicing all lab safety rules. If you have questions working with the equipment, you check with your instructor, but make sure that you're able to create a blue jet by the end of the class period.